Oh, recording in progress. That means we're making progress, Doty. That's a bit scary. I'm just going to check on my page as I do every time to make sure that
Is this
we.
the first time you've done this?
You know what? Every time I do it, it seems like that. It's just always good just to check that. And there you are. And it's always fun to check who's on poll, who's the first person that sort of checks in to
Hmm.
watch and do that sort of
And yeah,
stuff. So,
I've got
huh,
the easy job. Just sit there, answer questions. You got
yeah.
to read all this stuff and produce and direct. And
Tyler Barrick is on poll. Good job, Tyler. Aiden Gates, I'm going to say, and I know I'm saying that wrong. Hunter Bounds as well. Travis Strandell. So wonderful to have everybody's company this morning. It's not this morning in Apple Creek where people wash their cars. We're going to talk about that very soon. Just want to check, as always, that the audio is fine and that people can hear us because I don't want to waste a minute with the bloke with the spokes. And probably I might be the only person in the world that calls you that, Brad Doty.
I'm never going to live that down, am I?
Mate, it seems like only yesterday that you and we ran over that silent policeman. You remember that? We were up in
Yeah.
Newcastle. I was like,
Yep.
boom, what was that? And Brian Linigan said it's called a silent policeman. And are they called that in America, Brad?
No, no. That first trip, I mean, you guys opened my eyes to so many things and the slang and all the terms that you guys use. It was if you remember, I was taking notes. So what's this mean? What's that mean? You guys have literally a shortcut for every word. It seems like,
Well, I
but no, we
remember
don't call them.
I remember you saying to me that why do you make up longer words than the word? Like this is called your dog and bone. Hey, I'll just get him on the dog and bone. And you're like, but it's like why would you make the word longer than? So what we're talking about, we didn't run over a policeman. We should actually clarify that, right? We
Yeah.
it's called a
If
silent.
we did, he was really silent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. It's an object in the road that stops you running over it to flow the traffic. But of course. And remember when we nearly ran out of fuel? Like we literally were coming back from Newcastle, and I'm like, oh, there'll be a gas station here somewhere. And the car cuts out, and we just,
You, yeah. Never a dull moment with you. I'm telling you. What you call the silent policeman, I guess we call speed bumps over here. So
yeah,
red
yeah.
asphalt, and bumps in the road to slow you down. But yeah, you got so lucky on that one because I wasn't going to get out and walk.
The other day, Brad, I was driving through the back of South Australia, and we went through a fruit fly inspection. Now, we're skipping ahead to a lot of things here with Brad because I just get excited and I talk about everything. And he was in the car behind me. And in Australia, they have a roadblock that stops people bringing fresh fruit across state lines. Now, you would think that's kind of weird, but there's a thing called fruit fly in Australia, which is like a germ that can ruin your crops. And I remember that I'm at the front in the car and you're behind me. And I said to the lady, she came to the window, said, my friend from America is back there. Would you mind just asking him if he could get his wheelchair out and clean the dirt off the wheels on his wheelchair because it might be, an infection? Well, I just remember I'm looking in the mirror at you and I just remember you going, like, what?
You're always trying to get me in trouble.
Oh, as if you need my help.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I can do that on my own. I don't need your help.
We were doing a joint text, you and I, with Eric Arnold, and about how we're going to set this up. And Eric leaves me this message. He's like, Wade, you always make me laugh. I'm sitting here having a phone text with Brad Doty, and Brad is just slamming you. Like, he goes, I've never seen that side to him. I go, mate, he beats me up every time I see him. What are you talking about? Clearly, he doesn't know you.
I try to throw the first punch because to not give you a chance because I know better.
How is your beautiful family in Apple Creek? And I've been blessed to come to the Amish capital of America and hang out with you in Apple Creek, or Apple Creek, as some people call it. Where is it, and how many people are in there these days?
It's about 1,000 people, and we're about 10 miles southeast of Worcester, Ohio, where Jack Hodenshield and Sheldon live. I'm about, I don't know, 6 or 8 miles from Holmesville, which is probably 500 or 600 people, where Kenny Jacobs lives. But as far as big cities, we're about an hour straight south of Cleveland, Ohio, which is right on Lake Erie. So Akron is about 45 minutes northeast of us. That's probably the closest big city. So
Yeah,
yeah, we're out in the farm country.
yeah. And they have Amish limousines. Like, you know how you see like the buggy that's got the two people in it, but then they've got
Yeah.
the stretch buggies as
Stretch,
well.
yeah, stretch buggies. Yeah, yeah. I guess we're in the outback of Ohio here, where I live.
We remember when we went to yeah, you wanted to go to Outback Steakhouse when we were down in Sydney. He's like, I want to go to Outback. I'm like, you know, it's not really Australian, right? And he's like, what's a bloomin' onion? I'm like, come on, Brad. We don't have bloomin' onion. It'd be called a bloody onion if it was called anything at all. But uh,
Yeah.
as I recall, Brad, at the time, amongst many other things you were doing, you were making the iron placement where the Amish people put like the hot stone to actually create an iron. You were welding. Can you explain what you were doing then, and are you still doing it?
No, I haven't been doing that for years. They slowed way down. A lot of the Amish, especially the younger generations, some of them, some actually are allowed to have electric, maybe out in the shed or to the barn, but they can run a generator so the women can use an electric iron. But what I was uh, welding the fuel tank, these irons go back like in the 30s here in America that everybody used at the time, and it had like kerosene or a white fuel, and it had a flame that the iron looked like a standard electric iron, except it had a fuel tank on it. You lit a flame and it heated the plate, and that's what they ironed with. And so this local Amish company, they got harder to find parts for these. Basically, they're antiques. So a local Amish machine shop started building the irons, and they were making the tanks out of aluminum. They were two halves, and I'd put the two halves together and TIG weld them together. And that kept me busy for a while. But yeah, I'm I'm too old to do that now. Even if they were still wanting me to, I'd give that up. So
It's a fascinating culture, and it's probably not fair to call it a
yeah,
culture, right? That's not even fair to call it that. But it's fascinating to me, and you've been around them your whole life, like that way of life. It must be really hard for them at times to maintain all of those values when there's so much electronic stuff around them. There must be a real balance between how they stay true to the ways and still not, especially with the kids these days, mate.
yeah. Well, you've been to my house, and like right across the road from me is an Amish family, and they're depending on the church and the bishop. They had electric in their shop, their garage, and they actually had a dog kennel that they had electric, and they had gas lights and everything through the house. And about 2 years ago, the bishop allowed them to put electricity in the house.
Huh.
But now their a cousin lives right next door, and they don't have it. But then on the backside of me is what they call the old order or the Schwarzentruber Amish, and they're very strict. I mean,
Right.
they don't have gravel in their driveways. I mean, they live off the land and try to sell strawberries and eggs and stuff for some cash. And I mean, it's really we're right in the middle of it. Like I said, one side has electricity and they're Amish. All the boys drive trucks,
Huh.
and they have their own businesses. But then behind me, like I said, is this farm that they literally live off the land.
So in some parts of America, cash is still king, Brad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially around here. Yeah. Yeah.
Your book is tremendous, mate. It's Dave Argabright did such a phenomenal job as he does with all of those incredible books that he writes, and I think the Steve Kinzer one gets closer and closer.
Yeah.
But there's so many incredible experiences that you shared in your book, particularly growing up in that Ohio region, with Ed and Kenny and Jack and Dean and all those people. What an incredible childhood you had! But at the time, you were just being a kid growing up. You had no idea you were all going to become a huge part of American racing culture.
Yeah, it is. You and I've talked about it, and I think it's mentioned in the book that for four guys to end up just having fun on the weekends at a local podunk racetrack, with home built cars and Ed Hodenshield fixing everything we tore up for until we learned how to do some of it ourselves. To go on to national level like that, it's pretty incredible. I mean, at the time excuse me, we were just racing, getting to the next track or trying to get the next ride, move up the ladder. And, we were fortunate that things just fell into place. Maybe we had some talent, whatever, but yeah, it's really, when you stop and think, some have compared it to, like, say, for high school football players going on to, at least the college level, being successful at the college level. I mean, I guess you couldn't say compare it to NFL over here, because none of us three or four went to IndyCar or NASCAR, but to have the careers that we had in sprint car racing, it's pretty special.
How about the mouse racing again?
Yeah, yeah. When Kendra posted pictures of that, I had to do a double take because I thought it was a sprint car. I thought, what is
Yeah.
he doing? And yeah, he's running a little, what is it, 3/4 midget or T or something. I'm not sure what, but he's having fun. It sounds like.
Well, I mean, it's so cool that Race is racing now as well. And, I think Kenny has been really enjoying that process of racing with his grandson, for the last
Right.
couple of years. And it's funny when you go to Apple Creek or you go to Holmesville and you have the home of Brad Doty, you have that sign, and Kenny has in Holmesville the home of, Hall of Famer Kenny Jacobs. And a couple of years ago, I went out to the Kaufmans and hang out with Keith Kaufman and Kathy. And I'm like, where is the sign that says Mifflintown, the home of, the man for Mifflintown? And I actually
Yeah.
wrote to the city and said, why is there not a sign that says, the home of? And it's very similar to, and I know that Worcester is a much bigger place, but boy, it pisses me off there's not a sign somewhere for Jack.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. It's just there. Mine, unfortunately, was, gosh, 20 some years ago, probably, or 25. And it was just a fan who I ended up becoming friends with, him and his daughter. I didn't really know him at the time, just big fans of mine. And like I said, we've become friends. But he actually had the sign made and went to the courthouse here in Apple Creek and talked him into doing this. And I got a phone call to come in to the courthouse. And I thought, oh crap, the last time I was in there, I was getting written up for a speeding ticket. I thought,
Yep.
oh, now what did I do? And but anyway, that's how that came about. He pushed for it hard, and then Kenny, again, I think some people saw mine and thought, well, why isn't this more? People don't. I don't know. Like I said, I'm sure there's people that go through town that well, Apple Creek's on a state highway, so I
Yep.
know there's people that go through there that, who in the heck is Brad Doty, kind of thing. Kenny Jacobs and Holmesville, it's on a state route too, as well, and probably doesn't get the traffic that the Apple Creek does, but it is special. I'll have to admit, that to come from, like I said, grew up on a farm not far from here, and used to slide the tractors around out in the muddy field, and had some jalopy cars that we'd bounce around in the field, and just never thought about having my name at the end of the town. I guess
Isn't it
just pretty
beautiful that,
special.
and I often say that a lot of cities and places in America and Australia, Brad, owe their worldwide profile to racing. Because no disrespect, who would have heard where Apple Creek was until they knew who Brad Doty was? And when you think about all your drivers and Johnny Gibson and all those announcers and your Tony Bockhoven, etc., have all been amazing. It's always been from St. Mary's, New South Wales, Australia. Kerry
Oh
Madison,
yeah,
right? It's and you think about all those, from Worcester with Jack and Apple Creek and Holmesville and, all those Lemoore, California. None of those little places would have been known outside their own industry if it wasn't for racing.
yeah. That's true. I mean, I never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. For those guys to announce, um, like you said, the hometown, and people maybe uh, looking it up on a map and say, oh, I've been through there. Next time I get close, I'm going to check it out, kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, we brought up the sign. I mean, the county I live in, Wayne County, has a sports hall of fame, and they've got some former uh, baseball players and NFL players in this Hall of Fame. And I was fortunate enough to be inducted into the Wayne County Sports Hall of Fame last summer. And a couple of guys admitted they had to do some hard talking to get them to convince that a race car driver should be in the sport. They don't look at it as a sport,
Yeah.
until they start digging deeper and realized, like you said, the level that we got to. I guess there's a lot of stick and ball players in the Hall of Fame that were great in high school or even college, that are also in there. And so we kind of made it on a national level, and I'm proud to be the first one that's not a stick and ball guy to be in the Wayne County Sports Hall of Fame too. So that
That
was special.
sports, those sports only need one ball, Brad. Usually we have two. So tuning in as well, I want to say hello to Craig and Linda Cormack, who are tuned in.
Oh
Yeah, and I knew you would do that. And
man,
this is
great
what I
people.
love about racing, Brad. So I was wearing down Craig and Linda last year at Knoxville, flat out. They're at the A&P pub sometimes on a Tuesday night, and I'd be like, "You got to come to Australia. You've never been to Australia, Craig. You've got to come to Australia." And anyway, I asked him, could I do an interview with him like this, Brad? And he's like, look, I don't understand why you think that people would want to watch,
Oh,
me talk." And I was like, "Mate, I think you underestimate the impact you had with Eagle Raceway. The 1BK
race
is an
cars.
iconic car, like iconic.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
when he was in Australia, he did come down. He came for the Classic week with me and hung out, he and Linda. And he was blown away, I'm sure, by the amount of people that knew who he was. When I said Craig owned the 1BK, Craig owned Eagle Raceway, Craig was, a part of the World of Outlaws culture. That wouldn't surprise you that he's known like that.
Yeah, just anybody that's ever met them, they're great people. I mean, they are some of the nicest people in racing, and you know, built Eagle up into this massive showgrounds, and very successful. It seems like it at everything that they touched, and just really good. You get a chance to see them. That's the beauty of Knoxville. You go to the Knoxville Nationals, you get to see people, that racing family, once a year, and he's one of them that I always look forward to spending some time with.
Brad, we're all getting older, and that's a blessing, right? Because it beats the alternative. Because a lot of us aren't here anymore. So a lot of I hear, oh, how you going? Oh, I'm getting older. That's a blessing, and it's a privilege to get older. And as I get older, I realize how much more balanced my view of things become. They say that youth is wasted on the young. Um,
Yeah,
but I think like Jack Hewitt is a great example. So Jack is, whenever I talk to him, he doesn't like the KMD thing, right? He's always like, oh, the kids are only going to remember me as the guy that called that USAC official right? And he's going to kiss,
yeah.
blah, blah, blah. And I said, Jack, that's not your legacy. Like your legacy to us that understand is the Four Crown Nights, the run on the cushion, the late model, the wild hair and the beard and the punching and all that stuff. But he has genuine concerns that the kids growing up now, when they YouTube Jack Hewitt, that's what
Mm,
comes up. Now,
yeah.
your fan base who got to see you race is getting older because that's the natural progression of life. But
Yeah.
you've created a new brand as a promoter. I don't know if you've ever thought of that, but the Brad Doty Classic transcends Brad Doty now. So the t-shirts and all that sort of stuff, it's a new audience, mate. So people um, might not have seen you race, the younger generation, but they know the Brad Doty Classic. You probably haven't thought about that either. When Jack was in Hordenshield was in Sydney racing, one of the guys walked past, a young guy had his hoodie on. I said, "Oh man, cool hoodie." And he goes, "Yeah, some old guy that was." I said, "Don't you say that. That's the wild child, like."
Yeah.
But you have a brand now that is a promoter as much as it is Brad Doty.
Well, and I was fortunate too, after my accident, to get involved in TV, and that, as far as notoriety or my place in the sport, uh, to some certain age group, that's all they've ever known
Yep,
me, as a TV guy.
yep.
They've never saw me race. They saw me as a TV guy. Especially we're doing a lot of live shows in our heyday, and I had a lot of fun at it. And there are some people that only know me from TV, but yeah, to be a promoter, and I have to admit that, to explain the Brad Doty Classic, it started as a benefit race after my accident. I was paralyzed in 1988. In 1989, the USA organization leased Attica Raceway Park to have a benefit race for me. And it rained, and I think it actually rained out once or twice, but it didn't turn out real well. And of course, USA didn't come back next year. And Attica Raceway Park, I knew some of the owners that were promoting it at the time, and they called me and wanted to know if they could do a race every year, an annual race, and call it the Brad Doty Classic in honor of my career. And of course, I was honored and felt privileged that they'd even asked. So the race went along as the Brad Doty Classic for many years, and I really didn't have any affiliation with it. No, it wasn't part of the promotion of it, or no worries, no stress. You know how it is. But then in 2005, I actually became a co-promoter with then promoter Janet Holbrook at Attica, and got the World of Outlaws to sanction it for the first time. And I was working for the Outdoor Channel, which were tape delayed in those days, but we would do live opens at the track. So my first promotion of the Brad Doty Classic was TV. It was a World of Outlaws sanction. I had to do the TV part of it, do the open, and then focus on the race. And that's how it all got started, as me becoming co-promoter of the Brad Doty Classic. And so I say all that because I have to admit, it is kind of weird when you say the Brad Doty Classic is kind of a brand or whatever. It is weird to promote the Brad Doty Classic, and I'm, basically promoting my own name, it seems. But I'm
Yeah,
just
it's like you're
fortunate
talking
that,
in third person. It's like, well, Brad Doty says this, and well, Brad Doty would do. But those that know
yeah,
you well, Brad, know that you are, and my accent will disguise this word, but you're a warrior and you're a warrior. So you're both ways you could pronounce that, because you are a warrior in that you have battled through. You're a badass race car driver. You came through the other side of a really dark period in your life, and have created something very special off the back of that. But you're also a warrior. So if anybody knows Brad, is always like it. And that's why when he spent time with me in Australia, the poor guy just had to hold on for the ride. And Craig Cormack is very regimented too. It's like, this happens at this time, then we'll do this, and then okay, we'll do this. But you being a promoter blows my mind, because there are so
me
many
too.
parts to this, right? The weather is
Yeah,
a bitch to you, and at times it's caused you so much stress. But
yeah.
the track prep, the fans, the ticketing, the concessions, the t-shirt sales, that is so much out of your control. How do you even deal with that?
I ask myself that all the time too, Wade. I said, I know I've bumped my head a lot in a race car, but how did I end up as a race car driver? If it rains out, I didn't make any money. As a TV guy, if it rained out before we got there, I didn't make any money. And now I'm a promoter, and if it rains out, I don't make any money. What is wrong with me? But really great to have John Boris, Rex Lejeune, Justin Lisky, and the whole crew at Attica. They do the day-to-day operations. My job is marketing and bringing in marketing partners and trying to keep them happy,
Yeah.
and just coming up with some ideas, and throwing them out there. Some stick and some don't. But as far as the day-to-day operation, those guys handle it. They do the heavy lifting when it comes to all that kind of stuff. And I try to make sure that banners are right when I get to the track. Rex usually takes care of that, and Justin has all that taken care of, and stuff. But those guys, they deserve the credit for the day-to-day operations. Plus, they run it every Friday night like clockwork as far as that. And then when the World Outlaws are there, their officiating takes over, their crew takes over. So we've all been doing it long enough that all I have to do is hope the sun's shining, and that's where I worry. And people say, well, why do you worry about something you can't control? See, I'm the opposite, Wade. I don't worry about what we can control, because I feel it's under control. It's that weather that can just throw a wrench into it. You work months and months and months, and hours of preparation, and spend on advertising, and if it's a rainy day, and you got to run the race, and nobody shows up, you're in trouble. Worse yet, if it rains out, and we
Yeah.
normally don't have a rain date. So it's a lot to worry about. It's a lot to put it into one day. But
I have
fingers
such
crossed.
wonderful memories, Brad, of Gene Frankett, and Rex and Rick Lejeune, and the folks at Attica. And I remember, Mark Keegan was always a bullet around that place in that X
Mm-hmm.
car. And that's when the All Stars were really pumping. I'm just, remember Frankie Kerr and Dean
Oh
Jacobs
yeah.
and Kevin Huntley and Byron Reed. And, there was just, so many phenomenal teams on the road. The U2, the United Express Lines, Warren Johnson car. And I
Oh
remember
yeah.
Rick and Betty, and there was just so many amazing people. And for some reason in my brain, I wanted to mention, Brad, how cool it is to see Tyler Walker, yeah, improving in his life at the moment. And Tyler's been through some well documented addiction issues, and at the moment he seems happy, he seems well, and he seems like he's safe. And boy,
That's
he
good.
was such a great commodity for our sport, Brad. We've seen people with extrovert personalities come through our industry a lot, and it'd be easy to say, "Oh, he's okay. Look at him; he's the life of the party." But you just never know sometimes, and I'm so thrilled that Tyler seems to be on a path backwards to where he was as a person.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I didn't know that. So yeah, glad things are working out for him.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
Ohio is an incredible racing state. There are so many racetracks, and you probably raced, a lot of them. Is Eldora going to be a bittersweet place for you, mate, where it was a phenomenal place for you with your career, and then ultimately it was the place where your career at that part of your life ended?
Yeah, but I'm pretty lucky because I can't remember any of the crash. I remember, leading up to it, getting in the car, and actually I was just going through some photos the other day and found one of me standing in front of the car after introductions, and I thought to myself, gosh, 15 minutes later, my whole life changed, and I've watched the video and tried to analyze it.
Have you
It's pretty
really?
grainy. Oh,
Really?
oh yeah, it's pretty grainy and hard, from especially back in those days, the lighting wasn't the best, but just all the circumstances that came together, there was just so many things that had to align just right for it to happen the way it did, and that's the way I look at it. It was, for whatever reason, it was just meant to be. But like I said, I'm fortunate I don't really remember you know anything as far as the crash, but then getting to go back 10 years later and with the car with the hand controls, that was pretty satisfying. That was good therapy go back and make laps on my own terms, even though had hand controls in the car, and but I felt like that making those laps, and I could leave that old racetrack and tell it didn't beat me. I'm back.
That the TV broadcast was such an incredibly emotional thing, and I still go back every now and again. I was a huge fan of Steve Evans, as a lot of people
Oh
were.
yeah.
He was more than a broadcaster for you. He was a tremendous friend. It became very close to you. But I still remember Steve saying, and Brad just rolled up and thumbed it, and it was just like, and his voice cracked, and you could hear the emotion in his voice. And you had Sammy and Jack coming up behind you and bumping you, and so
Yeah.
out of that was one of the most profound experiences in American sprint car racing, Brad, to see you do that and that whole crowd on their feet. Still, whew, if I'm not careful, I'll cry now, mate. Like it's a very, very
um,
special time.
yeah, Steve did a great job with that. What a lot of people don't realize, we were live that night, and I was up in the booth calling the race. um, until after the B main, and my van was parked right behind the grandstands. They had the car back there. It was on display all afternoon, and there was about 6 or 8 steps to get up into the booth at Eldora, and 3 or 4 big guys grabbed a hold of me in the chair to get me up and down. They hustled me down the steps. I got in my van, slid my fire suit on, and we fired the car. We pushed it off and fired it, and rolled to the back gate there, turn 3, and let the engine warm up. And when I went out and made those laps and paced the field, I stopped in the back straightaway. They pushed me out the back gate, and they pushed me all the way around to the back of the grandstands. And as soon as I stopped the car, they brought my wheelchair up to the side of the car. And one thing, when I decided to do this, I didn't want any help getting in and out of the car. I wanted to see if I could do it myself. And we did a practice run. But anyway, I was able to hop out, sit on the left rear tire. I hopped into my wheelchair, still had my fire suit on. They carried me back up the steps, and they ran 4 green flag laps by the time I got back up in the booth. But I finished calling the King's Royals with my fire suit on that night for live TV. So it was a jam-packed day and night, that's for sure.
And knowing you, Brad, like I do about the warrior thing, that was a lot of outside your comfort zone. Not just being in the car, but being carried, right? Like being carried down steps, being brought
Yeah.
back out of the car, being carried back up. You're a very proud person, and your independence is extremely important to you, Brad. So I guess you had to push that off to the side and go, I need to get up there and I need to get in that thing. So I just got to suck it up.
Well, getting in and out of the car, I was able to do that myself. I transferred onto the left rear tire, grabbed the roll cage, and like I said, the first time I tried it, I got a hold of the roll cage and one pull, and I was sitting in the seat and thought, damn, I should have done this a long time ago. This is too easy. It fell right into it. But as far as being carried up and down, doing all the TV for all those years, I had to
Yeah.
swallow my pride and get used to that because there were very few racetracks had elevators, and some of these tracks, I mean, I-80, it seemed like it was a mile high up to the booth, and I mean, it's always about 100 degrees, and they'd have sometimes they had some of the Nebraska football players, big, and they were huffing and puffing by the time they got to the top. It was a long way, but yeah, that was it. I told people, and I kind of tongue in cheek, that I've never been as afraid in a race car as I am when they bring me down out of the booth when it's pouring down rain on aluminum bleachers that are slippery and stuff. That always made me a little more nervous than any race car, I think.
It's called aluminium, Brad. It's aluminium.
No, there's no extra I in there.
Yeah, I think you had an experience at Knoxville, didn't you, as well, where the weather was bad and you were up there. Can you that I remember you telling me that, don't I?
Yeah, before the elevators actually started working, they had to carry me up the outside steps, and at least there was a landing every 8 or 10 steps. The guys could stop or whatever. But yeah, we were up there when the tornado sirens started going off, and they were evacuating the grandstands. And I tease Ralph Shaheen to this day that he used me for an excuse that the producer comes in our ear. He said, "Hey, we're on to break. We need you guys to hang tight up there. We're going to come out of break and explain to people that we're going to be delayed and this and that, and explain it." And like I said, the tornado sirens are just wailing. And Ralph pushes the talk back button, which you're aware of. You push a button, you talk right to the truck, and Ralph's like, "Hey, you guys do realize, Brad has no way out of here unless you send somebody up here." I said, "I think we ought to get him down out of here before it gets any worse." And so we did. We got down out of there, but then we all gathered in the building right behind the grandstands, the Dyer.
Yeah, Di Hudson. Yep.
I don't know how many hundreds of people were in there, but thankfully the tornado didn't hit. But that was a sketchy moment because the elevators, like I said, weren't working, and we got down out of there before it hit,
One of the
before the rain hit.
one of the people that always watches this is Meridel Folkets, and Meridel is that amazing lady that just is in the elevator all day, just up and down
Oh
at
my
Knoxville.
gosh.
So I'm sure that Meridel will tune in at some point. I was at Attica in '96, Brad, for an all-star show, and the sky went green, and I was like, "Huh, what's this?" And then the siren
Yeah.
started, and everyone's like, "You got to get out of here! It's going to be a twist." I'm like, "What?" And then Danny walks past me and he gets in his race car and he belts in. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I figure I'm going to be the safest right there."
That's probably true. Yeah. Strap yourself in, put a helmet on. That's probably true. Be the wildest ride he ever took if they got a hold of him. But yeah, when the sky turns green, that's not a good sign.
Ooh. Mate, why is Knoxville so special? Not just the raceway, but the community. When you drive in, because you always drive in, you usually drive across from Apple Creek or wherever you're coming from. Why is it such a special place?
History, just the history of the Speedway. The Knoxville Nationals is our Indy 500, our Daytona 500, all rolled into one, and just it's special, just for the people like you said, the Cormacs and the people that we get to see once a year and spend a week with, and to see what is it, 6,000 people normally at Knoxville to 30,000 people hanging out for the week, and it just that's what makes it special. It's such a great event, but not to mention the money that it pays and just the prestige of having your name on the winners list to be a Knoxville Nationals champion.
Brad, the world has become a really reactive, really negative place. Sadly, since COVID, I think we've lost
Yeah,
sight of how lucky we are to do the things we've done. There's been a mindset change, but
yeah,
outside of America, the media presents America in a very different way to how you might see it and how I get to see it. And I wish that the world could see America as the American race fan, because
Yeah.
the kindness and the generosity and the friendliness and the hey, can we get a picture, please? Hey, would you mind if we did this? Hey, it's great to see you, Brad. Hey, where can we get your shirts? Like, people are
Mhm.
so kind and genuine in the racing industry. I wish that was the way that America was presented to the world.
Yeah, that's a good point, Wade. I mean, racing's all I know. I don't know the workings of NFL or other sports, and how all that stuff, how everybody gets along or doesn't get along, or who follows what. But you're right. The racing, especially the sprint car community, I mean, it's a niche sport, and the fans are diehard, and even they might boo somebody, and say they hate them or whatever. But if that person got hurt or needed help, they chip in or do whatever they could to help, and we see that in the work area all the time with competitors. And that's a good point. I too wish more people around the world could see that there's a America is a big country with a lot of people, and not everybody, or not every one of us are bad, I guess. But Australia. I mean, I'm sure you guys have some of your orange ones over there too. As you might say. But almost all the Australian, we Americans feel like the Australians the way you do about Americans. That
Yeah.
every Australian I've ever met has been so friendly and so kind, and I admire that you guys travel abroad and do the things, and how long you can do it. Over here, you get a week's vacation if you're lucky, at your job, where, some of your guys have come over 6 weeks, they're in America touring. You guys have seen things that people that live in America, we've never seen, So
Yeah.
I you ended
Yeah.
that about the Australian. You guys seem a little more laid back.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a national pride that you have. We have a patriotism, but we're not as open with it. You would remember, not there was very rarely would you see an Australian flag in a front yard, right?
Mm,
You never would see a politician's name on a flag on a car, or we're just very much a bit more withdrawn on that. We're very proud, Anzac Day and Australia Day, which you got to experience Australia Day, which is super cool. But I always say that there's nothing more incredible than standing at the racetrack at Knoxville for nationals when the anthem is being sung and Panda and JC come out with that big old flag. And I'm an Aussie, and it still makes me want to cry.
yeah.
And they honor us with our anthem and then a Canadian anthem. And in the last couple of years, Brad, you would have seen that we now do the Canadian, Australian, and American cars on the track with the flags up, like we did in Australia. So there's a beautiful national pride in America that is just it just bubbles at the surface all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's a great blend to have, the Australian fans that are so diehard, that, I mean, sprint car, I don't say it's on another level in Australia, but man, you guys, your fans are definitely ate up with it. And when they come to America or come to the Knoxville Nationals, everybody's, wide eyed and taking everything in. And it's a great time. That goes back to partly what you asked earlier about what makes the Nationals so special. It's just people coming from all over the world.
So, what is your best result at Knoxville? It doesn't have to be a win. Could be a heat, could be a memory. What, as a driver, what is there some night that stands out for you or a moment?
Well, my rookie year, I finished fourth and got rookie of the race. My first Knoxville Nationals. It was 1982, and then so fourth's my best finish. But then in '85, in Ron Pack's 4A car, it had a steel block. When a lot of them were running aluminum back then, and to say it was a low budget team, could be an understatement. We won some races. Ran a true outlaw schedule, race wherever we wanted to race. Had a young crew. Tony Wilson was kind of running the team, but we won the non-qualifiers on Friday night, and then started in the middle of the C and won it. started probably, I guess, would have been 20th in the B, and we won it, and then started what 20th in the A and finished sixth. Now, and Wolfgang did it. He came out of the the D, and I laugh. I said, but he didn't win all of them. I won all the ones I was in except the main event. But Wolfie will come back with he finished fifth in the A and one place better than me too. But a lot of people remember Wolfie that was televised. The first year he did it. But I think Jeff Swindell's done. There's been a few of us do it. But those two are what really stands out to me. At Knoxville. My best, like I said, best finish was a fourth, and then to get to run the alphabet was pretty special.
You when you grab a younger fan these days, Brad, they're going to be defined in a lot of ways by Kyle Larson, by the young guns of the era these days. Brad Sweet is now in a different echelon, in a different age bracket, like Donnie. That sort of, to me, Donnie is the GOAT of the modern, since the post Kinzer era. Donnie is the guy. Certainly,
Yeah.
Kyle's versatility is what blows everybody's minds, and he's the most rare talent I think that there's been. And I know everyone's going to compare him to Unzer and Andretti and even Tony. Oh my God, Tony Stewart just won a top fuel Wally. Like if you look at
Second one,
smoke,
yeah.
like
Yeah, just got his second one.
yeah,
So I mean, and he's run sports cars and the IROC and
yep,
the SRX and IndyCar, and yeah, Tony Stewart, definitely. But I'd say to a lot of people, Kyle, I didn't get to see Tony running with the Outlaws on TV. I didn't see a lot of the USAC stuff,
yeah,
but I tell people Kyle Larson's the most well-rounded race car driver that I've seen in my lifetime, because I never saw Foyt or Parnelli and Andretti in their prime.
yes,
But for Kyle to jump from one to the other, from one night to the next, and be able to win in any of them is impressive. I mean, even Tony. I mean, he could do that, but I just both of them have a lot of talent. There's no doubt about it. And with what Tony's doing with the drag racing,
oh,
he seems more laid back and calm and in a great place. Having the baby and stuff. It's a different Tony Stewart for sure.
as a commodity, Kyle is a very, very large value for you as a promoter, mate. When word gets around that the 57 is coming to the Brad Doty Classic, that is a significant bonus for you. It doesn't mean the race is any less cool if he's not there, but it doesn't hurt you when he is, does it?
No, he definitely puts butts in the seats, as they say. And he won three out of four races until last year. David Gravel won it, and that's good or bad. Some people felt like they wanted to see a new winner, or oh no, is Kyle going to? But then it also goes back to the Steve Kinzer or the Donnie Schatz era, when anybody those, so they pay to come and see him get beat, or they pay to come and see him win. So it's a win-win for a promoter.
Yeah, and that my point back to the younger audience now being, very Kyle focused, and Corey Day, and there's so many,
Oh,
really outstanding young talents that are coming through. But you raced in such an incredible era, Brad. When you had the King and you had Sammy and you had, Doug, the Mount Rushmore right there every night. But you had Bobby Davis, you had Dave Blaney, you had Scruffy. There was just so many of those, but it seemed bigger because we were younger, Brad. Like, to
yeah,
me, people are going to compare Mahomes to Montana, and because they're different eras. But my
right.
God, you never had time to stop and enjoy it, Brad, because you're just busy racing your ass off trying to pay bills. But boy, what an
Yeah.
era you ran in with the Outlaws.
Wait, and I've been asked that a lot, or I made a statement one time, and somebody kind of beat me up on Twitter, like they, I don't, I really don't think they knew my history, I guess, because I said it's probably harder to win with the World of Outlaws. This a couple of years ago, I said it's probably harder to win with the World of Outlaws today than it's ever been. And they said basically that I forget how they were, I was spitting on Sammy and Steve or whatever, and what I meant by that is the competition is so much tighter today. The cars are more equal, but I Kevin Eckert put stat sheets together for me of my career, I wouldn't remember. I remember the losses far more than the wins. But something will come up on X or Instagram or something, and have a question. So I'll start leafing through stuff, and I'll have to admit, Wade, there's times it'd be Sammy, Steve, Woofy, me, Woofy, Steve, Sammy, me. A couple times it might be me, and then those three. But people, again, you can't. It's hard to compare eras. The talent that those three had. Anytime you could beat them, and younger fans that never saw it, there's no way to describe it. What having those three show up at any racetrack, you had to have your elbows up to even compete.
My very first experience in America was '92 at the Beertown Showdown in Hales Corners, Wisconsin. Flew from Perth to Auckland, Honolulu, Honolulu, San Francisco, not LA because the Rodney King stuff was going on literally in that moment. So we flew to San Francisco and then out to Milwaukee, and it rained out both nights. But we're standing there looking through the fence while they're rolling around, and it was like, oh my God. It was like being in the wildlife enclosure at the zoo. It was like, there's the TMC one, there's the Valvoline 11, there's the two winners. There is the 20, the Pennzoil 22. It was just like the Vivarin, like the Casey Luna car. It was like, because in Australia we could only read open wheel, mate. We didn't. There was no, as you know,
Oh
there was
yeah,
no Facebook or streaming or anything like that. We might occasionally catch a TNN thing or something, but so it was a really profound experience to see that era up close. And I guess kids now go to Knoxville and go, "Oh, there's the 57. Oh, there's Wrightsville.
yeah.
Oh, there's gravel." You know what I mean? There's that and on that, is James McFadden one of the best Aussies you ever saw, Brad?
He's definitely good. He's had some bad luck, but he definitely is a gasser. He's got talent, but I have to admit his shoey thing about turns my stomach every time he does that. But he is a gasser. There's no doubt about it.
It's really cool. Kerry Madsen has been inducted into the Knoxville Hall of Fame, which I think is phenomenal because Kerry
Yeah.
and Brooke Tatnall is another one. I mean, how can you possibly go past Brooke Tatnall and his incredible contribution to American
Oh yeah.
racing? You throw Linton Jeffrey into the mix, Jamie Moyle, with
Yeah.
his phenomenal ability to build motors now and be part of that culture. But yeah, I was very thrilled to see that Kerry is now in the Hall of Fame. This weekend is the Avanti Windows and Doors Corn Belt Clash for the AMSOIL USAC National Sprint Cars. What a concept to see non-wing cars around Knoxville Raceway, Brad. Whew.
Yeah. I remember. I don't know what year it was, but I remember that being up in the booth watching them, and I thought, man, those guys, that definitely takes some nerve hustling around
Some
Knoxville without a wing on. You just hope it's pretty hard packed and dry slick.
Yeah, absolutely. What date is the Brad Doty Classic this year, Brad? Give us some information.
Tuesday, July 15th, the Attica Raceway Park. And anybody that's interested they can go to atticaracewaypark.com or theworldofoutlaws.com, either website for ticket information. And just got to keep my fingers crossed that the weather's great. And we've got some great marketing partners who've been with us for many, many years, and they're all coming back, got a few new ones. And so things are really falling into place. And yeah, just got to hope for good weather.
Siri, how far is Knoxville, Iowa to Attica, Ohio?
I could have told you that.
Is about 993 kilometers from Knoxville, Iowa by car.
Okay, so it's 9.5 hours drive if I can get in by Pella Motors Jeep and drive out on that Tuesday to come hang out with you. And funnel cakes are a big thing, I think, at Attica, as I remember rightly, which is basically deep fried flour with sugar. God bless America.
I don't know about that, but they definitely have good and cheap, reasonable food prices at Attica. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, if you could make it, that would be great.
All right, so Brad is really big on Twitter. He doesn't do Facebook. He's just now got into Instagram. Look at him go, people. Look at I'm so proud of you, Brad.
Instagram is too confusing. I still haven't figured it out. X just seems so much easier, but Anyway, yeah.
You're prolific on Twitter, though, on X. Brad is constantly monitoring, sharing, being a part of the industry. Brad, mate, I'm so proud to call you a friend. You're such a remarkable person. You're very genuine. You're very caring. You still love this sport as much as you ever did when you could have walked away from it and gone, no thanks. That took part of my life, but I think you see what it gave to you rather than what it took from you. I love
Absolutely.
seeing you at Knoxville. I love the culture and the pride in the uniform that you have, and I love seeing people wearing your shirts. And it's always a pleasure to do this with you, mate. I'm very grateful to you.
Oh, thank you. I value your friendship, Wade. You know that, and always look forward to seeing you at Knoxville. Like I said, I hope I have half the energy that you do when I'm your age, because you wear me out. Just on the phone, you wear me out. Not trying to keep up with you at Knoxville. It's like, man, how does that guy do it? So good on you, mate.
So, Check It Out was the song that you always told me, right? The John Mellencamp song. Check it out. Got to say hello
Yep.
to my neighbors, and I always relate to minutes to memories. Days turn to minutes and minutes to memories. Life strips away the dreams that we had planned. You are young and you are the
Yeah.
future. So suck it up, tough it out, and be the best you can.
Yep. Yep. And you live by that. I can tell.
Looking forward to seeing you in July, mate. And please get out to the Brad Doty Classic. USAC is at Knoxville. Oh my goodness, what an incredible concept! Brady Bacon is usually phenomenal around there. I know that Brian Holbert has just made a comment on the thing. If you want wings, go to the bar. Is the way that he's describing how you should go to USAC instead of doing that. Please give my love to your beautiful wife and your amazing children and the 4,000 grandkids that you have. Apparently, there's no TVs in Apple Creek. They just make grandbabies. Looking forward to seeing you in July, mate.
Hope to see you there. Thanks, Wade.
Appreciate you, Brad. Such a
Appreciate you.
wonderful man. Cool dude and a great guy and a warrior from Apple Creek where they like to wash their cars. See you, mate.